I refuse to marry you. You're making me suffer.
I honor our father's custom, but I cannot be his wife.
You must be my wife according to customs.
No, I won't. You are an evil man.
How dare you? Who do you think you are?
I am your brother's widow.
Did you know that some people don't die, they just wait it in silence for the day the truth will rise from the river? The elders say the river there is not an ordinary one. It listens, it remembers, and sometimes, it answers. Among the people of Umokoro lived a woman named Neca. To say she was beautiful was not enough, her beauty was the quiet kind. The kind that made men lower their gaze and women sigh in secret envy. Her laughter was soft like rain on clay roofs, and her voice could calm quarrels. When she married Obina, the younger son of the late Chief Okonkwo, the entire village rejoiced. Obina was gentle, hardworking, and madly in love with her. For a time, it seemed the gods had smiled upon their union. But in Umuokoro, joy never stays too long. The land itself seems jealous of happiness. It began when Nneka conceived her first child. Her mother-in-law, a sharp-tongued widow named Mama Ifika, grumbled that she didn't like the way the pregnancy looked. She is too quiet, she told her friends at the market. Women who carry quietly deliver storms. When the 9th month came, the storm truly came. The midwife said the labor started before sunrise and ended near midnight. By dawn, the baby was gone, born silent, without breath. And Nneka hovered between life and death. They said she looked dead when they wrapped her in white cloth. But she woke 3 hours later with a scream that made even the cocks crow. From that day, people called her the woman who returned. Her husband stood by her, but something changed in him after that night. He became withdrawn, stared too long into empty space, and often muttered prayers that made no sense. A month later, he went to his farm and never came back. They found his body near the old cotton tree. Eyes open, mouth filled with dust, as though he'd been silenced mid-cry. The news shattered Nneka. She mourned in black cloth and silence. And when the morning moon ended, the trouble began. Obina's elder brother, Okafor, called a meeting of the Umona, the family kinsmen. Standing in the compound, with the elders smoking long pipes, Okafor cleared his throat and said, "By our custom, my late brother's wife becomes my wife. She cannot roam free like a stray goat." Nneka bowed her head and replied softly,
I honor our father's
customs, but I cannot be your wife. Your heart does not know kindness. The elders murmured, but Okafor's mother hissed, "She thinks she is better than our blood." From that day, Nneka's suffering began. Her husband's farmland was seized. The barn she harvested from was emptied overnight. If she walked to the stream, children mocked her. If she entered the market, whispers followed her like shadows. Still, she held her peace. Each evening, she walked alone to the river's edge, kneeling where the water kissed the stones, whispering prayers only the river could hear. "River of my mother's mother," she would say, "take my tears to the gods. Tell them I am tired." And the river, as if listening, would ripple once and grow still again. One moonlit evening, while she sat crying, a voice came from behind her, a calm, deep voice that felt like evening wind. "Why does the daughter of the soil speak only to the water?" Startled, she turned. A man stood there, tall, dressed in white cloth, eyes bright like a coal that never dies. He looked human, yet not entirely so. There was something ancient about his calm. "I'm sorry," Nneka said quickly, wiping her tears. "I didn't know anyone was here." "I've been here longer than you think," the man replied, smiling faintly. "They call me the seer of the river. When people weep at this bank, I hear their hearts before their words." Nneka lowered her gaze. "Then you know my pain already?" He nodded. "Yes. And I know the river is not blind. You have been wronged, but do not seek revenge with your hands. Let the river judge. His words confused her, yet they wrapped around her heart like warmth. From that night, whenever she went to cry, he appeared. Sometimes with a story, sometimes with silence. She found peace in his presence. Though she never asked where he came from or where he went after each night. But peace never stays long in Umokoro. For many moons, Neca and the seer met by the riverbank. He never told her his name, and she never asked. All she knew was that his eyes saw through her pain like sunlight through water. When he spoke, the river stilled, as though even the spirits strained to listen. Sometimes he brought her white cowrie shells and said, "Each one holds a whisper of peace. Keep them." Sometimes he simply sat beside her while she wept. And when she wiped her face, the world seemed lighter. But peace, in Umokoro, is a visitor that never stays long. It started with whispers, soft at first, then sharper. Women at the market said Neca was consulting with spirits. The uncle, Okafor, heard it too and laughed in mock outrage. A widow who speaks with shadows.
She has gone mad.
That one has gone mad. He told the elders, pounding his walking stick against the earth. She shames our family's name. Soon, Okafor's bitterness grew close. He sent his son, Ifika, to spy on Neca at the river. Ifika returned with wild tales. That she sat talking to thin air, that she smiled at the breeze. That sometimes a man appeared and vanished when the wind changed. The old mother joined in, saying, "She is no longer human. A woman who loses child and husband always stands strange." And so the family began to torment her more openly. If she went to fetch firewood, they scattered her bundle. If she planted yam, they uprooted the mounds. Her once lively compound grew empty, even friends began to avoid her. Yet Neca endured. She only whispered to the river, "Hold me, before I break." One evening, when the sky was dark with rain, Neca stood at the edge of the river longer than usual. Her eyes were hollow, her voice small. "River," she whispered. "How long must the innocent bleed before the gods open their eyes?" The seer appeared, his white cloth fluttering like mist. "This is the last night you will cry here," he said. "Tomorrow, the river will speak for you." Neca looked up. "And if I don't return?" He smiled gently. "You will, in another way." The rain began to fall, heavy and fast. And before she could speak again, lightning split the sky. The seer was gone. By dawn, Neca's hut was empty. Her clay pots lay scattered, her mouth cold. By the riverbank, the villagers found her wrapper. Torn, soaked in rain and streaked with dark stains. The women screamed. "Okafor has done it. He has killed her." But Okafor only laughed. "Show me the body. If the gods love her, let them bring her back." The case reached the king, Isnamdi, a stern old ruler whose word was the law of the land. He summoned Okafor to the palace. "Where is your brother's wife?" the king asked. Okafor bowed. "My king, I know nothing of her disappearance. She was troubled. Maybe she took her own life." The crowd hissed, but the king raised his hand. "Silence. We will not judge without proof. Tomorrow, the chief priest will call upon the gods." At sunrise, the people gathered before the shrine of Oni, the earth goddess who sees all things buried. The air smelled of palm wine and burning herbs. The chief priest, Ome, stood before the crowd in red cloth and white chalk. Okafor and his son knelt before him, hands trembling slightly. "Swear," the king commanded, "that you know nothing of this woman's blood." Ome lifted the sacred god. "If you speak lies before the earth, may the land reject your feet." Okafor spoke first. "If I had a hand in her death, may my tongue dry in my mouth and my blood turn to dust." Ifika repeated the same, his voice thin. The god was poured, the libation made. Nothing happened. The priest smiled faintly. The gods have spoken, they are innocent. The villagers murmured, half in doubt, half in fear. The king nodded, though his eyes were heavy. So it shall be. What no one knew was that the night before, Okafor had visited the priest's hut with a calabash of cowries and oil. Let the gods sleep, just for one day, he had said. And the priest, weak with greed, had agreed. Weeks passed. The matter faded like smoke until one market day. An old drunk named Odigu, the village's shame and laughter, was seen walking near the shrine before dawn. He was sober that morning, hunting for palm wine before the cellars opened. That was when he heard voices. Okafor's deep tone and the priest's nervous whisper. The river is restless, said the priest. Her blood stains your hands, even Oni will not keep silent forever. Okafor hissed. Let the river rage. I have paid you. If she dares to speak, I will silence her again even in the world beyond. Odigu froze, heart pounding. He said nothing and slipped away. But later, when the sun rose high and his calabash was full, his tongue loosened. By afternoon, he was staggering through the market, shouting, the gods have been bribed. The priest has eaten evil. At first, people laughed, oh, Odigu has started again. But when he began repeating the exact words he'd overheard, the laughter died. The guards seized him and dragged him before the king. His Nnamdi frowned deeply. Odigu, speak with clear mouth, what did you hear? The man trembled, wine still on his breath. He repeated every word. The crowd gasped. The king's face darkened. Summon the priest, he said quietly. That evening, when the priest stood before the throne, his hands shook like plantain leaves in the wind. The king asked calmly, Ome, the gods you serve, did you take from these men to twist their word? The priest raised his head, sneering. Is Nnamdi, beware your tongue. Such things have never happened in Umukoro. If I lie, may the gods strike me dumb this instant. The words had barely left his mouth when his eyes rolled back. A terrible silence fell. He opened his mouth again, but no sound came out. The people screamed. The king rose slowly. The gods have answered, he said. Take him away. Okafor tried to flee, but the guards caught him. At dawn, the king's men tied both the priest and Okafor to the great Iroko tree. The king took a piece of skin from the priest's arm and hung it at the shrine's door, a warning to all who defile truth. By noon, both Okafor and his son were dead. Their bodies cold, their eyes wide in terror. The land was quiet again. But peace, in Umukoro, is never quiet for long. Umukoro slept uneasily after the judgment. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. At night, dogs howled at nothing, and the river sang louder than it ever had. The old women said it was the sound of spirits washing the land clean. Days stretched into weeks, and still the villagers spoke in hushed voices. The king's guards kept watch at the shrine. For sometimes they heard whispers from the trees, as though the ghost of the guilty still argued with the wind. Then one afternoon, while the sun burned like copper above the hills, a cry rose from the western path. People of Umukoro, come and see what the gods have done. Farmers dropped their hoes, traders left their stalls. Even the king stepped out of his courtyard. And there, walking slowly toward the palace gate, was the seer, robed again in white. And beside him, holding his hand gently, was Neca. Alive. Her face pale but peaceful, her eyes clear like water after rain. The crowd gasped and fell to their knees. Some covered their heads, others began to wail in awe. The seer raised a hand. Do not fear. The river does not keep the souls of the innocent. It returns them when justice is done. He led Neca before the king. Namdi could only stare, his staff trembling in his hand. Woman of tears, he said softly, the gods have spared you. Tell us, how? Neca bowed. My king, when I was left by the river. My breath was faint, but the river heard my cry. It carried me to his hands, she pointed at the seer. And the spirits of the water tended my wounds. They told me to wait, for truth was still walking home. The seer nodded. The gods allowed her to live so the land would see that justice is not a rumor. When men lie, the earth listens. When they bribe the gods, the river wakes. The king fell to his knees. Forgive us for doubting the unseen. But the seer only smiled. Do not ask forgiveness of me. Ask it of yourselves. For every village carries its own silence like a curse. He turned to Neca. Your tears have finished their journey. Live again. Then he began to walk away, fading with the sunlight. By the time night came, he was gone. And some swore they saw his reflection in the river, smiling. Years later, children would sit under the moonlight and hear the story of Neca, the woman who returned from the river. They would whisper that the seer still guards the waters of Umukoro, listening for voices of the wronged. We live now in a world where men no longer fear shrines, but they still build idols in their hearts. In cities of bright lights, injustice hides behind titles and wealth, and truth is traded for comfort. Yet remember this, every tear is a witness. Every silence has an echo. The gods of yesterday may no longer sit in clay temples, but justice still walks among us. In the courage of those who speak. In the hearts that refuse to bribe their conscience. So, when you see wrong and pretend not to see, you become like the chief priest who lost his tongue. And when you mock the broken, you stand beside the uncle who buried his own peace. The river never forgets the tears of the innocent. Whether in Umokoro or in the cities beyond, the water still listens. And when the time is right, it always speaks.